Hello, everyone. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you're doing well in your current circumstances and that you get a few things done while you listen or while you go about your homemaking today. And for a little while, why don't you just shut out the world and listen and think about great plans and just shut out all that loudness of the reports that come out and are competing for our attention all the time and interfering in our happy homes. So, I would like to start out today by imploring you to go and get ready. One of the things about personal appearance and taking care of it is it gives you kind of an anchor for your day to work around. If you can get that done, I personally find that I don't do very well unless I do have that part done. Even if I get up late, I find I spend that time to get ready and prepare to take care of my physical appearance. You know, when I was younger, I liked to wear something different every day on a trip because I knew there would be photographs and I didn't want to be wearing the same thing. And I didn't like to wear the same thing on another trip because I wanted it all to be different. And also I had a mother-in-law that was quite keen on mood and season and color. And if she had a dress that matched the flowers or the bushes that were in bloom at that time, she would try to get someone in her family to take a picture of her with that dress next to those blooms. And I still have pictures of her. She was so proud of the beauty of the Lord's earth and wanted to compliment it in some way. And this is a great motivation for waking up in the morning and getting dressed, is the idea that we're dressing for something more important. And you are not any less important than all that's going on in the world. You're not less important than the famous people or well-known people or people in media. You're not less important. In fact, what you're doing at home is actually going to end up being more important. Now, before you go today, I want to share with you the scent of the day. It's called dill, and it grows. I tried to pick some. It's kind of faded here, but it grows in a long stalk, kind of like mustard seed in a long stalk. And we used it mostly, is familiar to us, for using with salmon. It's best cooked with salmon and also with dips when you're making a sour cream dip or a dip for vegetables. And so, because I have my ladies' Bible class coming up, I've been to a place where you can get these for 99 cents, and I bought them, each one of these, and we're going to talk about the herbs of the Bible. And so I want to mention what these are good for, what dill is good for. And it was used as part of the offerings of the Old Testament. And it has such a wonderful scent and taste. And so here are some of the things I've read, and you can do your own research and go search about dill, what it's important for. It's calcium, iron. It helps alleviate bloating, diabetes, and helps aid in digestion and cramps. Sleep is a sleep aid. It cures hiccups and stiffness and arthritis. And I think that you can go and look that up to see how much of it is applicable. And everybody should always research their own health. And the reason for that is that no physician, no doctor, not even a naturopath doctor, knows everything about you or your body. You can go in with some kind of malady, but they don't know what you did before or after or the month before or the year before, and everything ties into it. So keep a record of your own health and how you feel. You get a little book with a pen that goes in it like this, and it fits neatly in your apron pocket or your jacket pocket or your purse, and you can write down things that you've observed about your moods or about your health that can be very, very helpful. Keep track of your own health and your own life. And so then the other thing I wanted to show you today is the design of the day. Now you remember I told you I got some of these blank cards. Some of them are, you can get packets of these that have lines on the other side or lines on both sides, but these are blank. And what I wanted to do for my design today, you remember I had spoken to you about this book called Cottage Core, which I liked a lot because it had activities for every season, and and core means heart, and they're just little simple things. And I'll just read, like for spring, a special table setting, how to make your own soap, and leftover roasted vegetable tart, wildflowers, and spending time with trees and teas, and special spring decorating, and for autumn, introducing nature into your home, how to make a rag rug, berry jam, just various things. But it's a lovely book, and it's from England, and I gave my granddaughter one, and I suggested to her, these are nice activities, but we can't do them all. We can't always do them all. Maybe not possible. Why don't you put some of these cards together, just punch some holes in it, and I run an old piece of rag, like a strip of fabric that I've torn through it to tie it, and make your own. Just write your own, and do spring, summer, winter, fall, and start writing the things that you actually do. For instance, they go for lots of walks, and they pick wildflowers, and she could press one and put it in here, and she could describe what it is, and also what they eat or drink, and various things they like to do together, activities, songs they've made up. Do your own. Ladies, these books are nice, but having gone through thousands of books and gone through them, I will tell you, many of you could probably do a better job for yourselves and write your own stuff, the things that you would like, and then your children and your descendants would say, my grandmother is an author. And you don't have to have them published, but you can go to lulu.com and be your own self-publisher, where you don't have an editor to reject your work, and you can get anything you want printed, and you don't even have to publish it to the world, but you can order it for your people and for your friends. Now, another thing I want to show you before you go is this wonderful box of strawberry tea that my daughter got me. And it's a herbal tea, and this is what the package looks like. And I love the box, and it's by Clipper. I'm going to have to order myself some because I'm really enthusiastic about this. It has strawberry and elderflower and I think lemon or something in it. But when you make it, now ladies, you've heard of people who are drug abusers. There are people who are also tea abusers. I've seen you take these bags of this wonderful fragrant herbal teas and tisanes, which aren't really, it's not black tea, and leave the bag in the cup of hot water and just let it turn black and bitter. These are designed to dip into hot water till it's a light pink, and if it's lemon balm, it's a light yellow, and it's very, very fragrant. And these are delicate. Tea is a delicate commodity, very delicate, and you don't let it sit in there. And that's why a lot of people don't like teas and tisanes and herbals and even black teas, the way that they abuse it. So dip it in there lightly and enjoy it. Enjoy the fragrance. It's more than just drinking something. It's this wonderful fragrance. Those of you who are coffee drinkers know that. If you make some coffee in the morning, your house smells good. And if you will get some of this strawberry, I've noticed if I put it, a little bit of it in a cup and carry the cup around, the house smells really good. So I wanted to show you that. And then the other thing that I want to show you is this recent Victoria magazine. Now, I've mentioned to you that I felt that you should all get this as one of your home resources, and it's not about homemaking. It's not about anything, but you can adapt it into your house, and it's a tool to reinforce the happy life, because there's no bad news in this. There's no agenda. There's no controversy. There's nothing in here so far. Now, every now and then you might find something, but they don't have advertising unless it's to advertise for their own magazine. And so that's nice. But my granddaughter and I have a Thrive class, and that just means we get on Zoom and we talk about various things of interest, and she tells me something or teaches me something, and I teach her something, and we decided to go through this. And so she said, well, on page, first of all, I mentioned how clever they were. This comes in the mail without a envelope, so you get to see the color. It pops out at you. So when you've got all this other dull mail coming in, trying to see if I can find some envelopes, you've got all this other dull mail coming in that's probably not worth getting, and you get, as a matter of fact, my granddaughter has decided to color the envelopes and put designs on the outside of the envelopes so that when they come in the mail, they are a bright spot. And so let's just say no to dull envelopes. Anyway, this magazine, we decided that they were very clever in choosing this color. They chose this wonderful aqua for the background, and then this wonderful light pink. Just has a calming effect and non-jolting atmosphere. And don't we all need peace and goodness and light? And also we need to be enriched, and we need to be built up. And so that's why I tell you, let's put the world away for a while, and we'll just build one another up. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am that you come here, all 20 of you, and listen and leave a comment if you like. I don't insist on it because I think that it would take time, and we want to spend less time on the web. It's just something you can listen as you go. And it's changed my life to be able to come here, because we've endured a couple of years where people were isolated from one another. They couldn't come to see you, or didn't feel they should, and so our lives were rather limited. So it was very nice to be able to come here, and it gave me, you know how I tell you that your appearance and the preparation, getting yourself ready, can be kind of an anchoring point for your day. It's the same with coming here to talk to you. This is something that I feel that after I've finished talking to you, I'm ready to go. I can now launch onto my homemaking. So we went through this magazine, and she would turn the page and tell me something that she liked. And one of the things she liked was this fashion show this woman had done, who created fashions, and she liked this skirt and blouse that was very Victorian, and she was telling me that would be one of the things she would like to do, is have a fashion show. And we talked about having a fashion show with just mannequins or dress forms, or hanging or hangers, and just hanging the things that she had sewn around in an arrangement, and that way you wouldn't have to have models. You wouldn't have to have someone having to change rather quickly. And she was talking about how that would be a dream for her to have a dress shop. And so we decided on a plan to have a dress shop one day when she came here, and we will just pretend, but we will do it because we can do anything we want. We don't have to wait to let our dreams come true. We can just live them. And so we decided that there would be several scenes, and I would take pictures, and we would put them in her little book or scrapbook or whatever you want to call it, mini journal. And then she showed me pictures in here that she would like to paint because she's taking an online painting class with a friend of hers who's the teacher. And we talked about how clever they were, the publishers, to put bright spots in this book. It's much like the Ideals magazines of the olden days. The pages I wish were a little more quality. I really do. But I suppose they're doing this for the weight and also the cost. But when I give someone and here's a scene that she liked. When I give someone one of these magazines as a gift, I really want them to keep them and not use them as a fire starter, because these are quite valuable. As I've noticed, if I miss an issue and I go online to find a back issue, just a recent back issue, even a month after it's been published, the price goes up. I mean, people know they can get something for this on eBay or Etsy, so these are quite valuable. So when I give one to somebody, I'm kind of apprehensive. I don't own them, but I'd like to know that they could keep them, and then in months to come. Years ago, Victoria had a few years of a different publisher, and people weren't very happy with it, and we all just kind of canceled our subscriptions because the advertising got real bad and the subject matter not so great. And so what we did is we went back to our old issues that we had saved, and when June came along, we get out all our June issues from previous years, and we were happy. That was just what we wanted to do. And also there's lots of food in here and lots of floral. The first thing I do is I go to look at the florals, the floral arrangements, and they always have a lot of them here. And so I wanted you to know that this is, like, for instance, here's a beautiful tea time, and they show all the recipes are in here, and she was going to do them all. So I wanted to show you that, and also wanted to read something to you, because we talked about homemaking, because that's my next subject, and I hope you've got your appearance ready now and you've listened long enough to be convinced that you should, make yourself as... A lot of you are very good looking, and I don't think anybody is truly ugly, but I think the thing is we try to base our looks on what other people look like, what the magazines are saying we should look like, and all the makeup industry and all that. And recently I went to some videos on YouTube of the Jane Austen era, and the Jane Austen look, sort of, which was a natural, outdoorsy, healthy, fresh, no makeup look, and I'm enjoying it a lot because it's a lot less time to get ready if you don't have to paint your face on. And but also we should be happy the way we are, and before people started making us think that we needed to do more. And so I wanted to read to you something that was remember I talked to you previously about something I called the creepy house syndrome, and I thought, Eureka, I found it. It's the air. It's the stuffy house syndrome. It's the air, the non-free flowing air. And I had been reading from the Jane Austen diet book about the air, and decided that might be one of the problems. And since I've decided to have regular, frequent air, free-flowing air in my life, and also open the doors and windows to rooms regularly, I haven't had so much of it. But one day I actually felt it outside. One of my grandchildren is staying here for a little while to help us out with all of our technical problems and our plumbing problems, and he's got so much talent. But we decided we'd go for a drive one night after, because he works from home, and we decided to go for a drive one night to a lake that had a cement walk all the way around it, and walk along this walk and look at the sailboats and just all the things going on there. And he's also a photographer and a bird watcher, so he was doing all that, but we were walking around and the air was real still there. And of course the boats weren't real active that evening. We did see some kind of a regatta going on over in one corner of the lake. But I got the creepy house syndrome while walking around outside in that vast, expansive, airy place because the air was so still. I said, I just feel a kind of a lost feeling. And so some of you might recognize that. But I was reading in the book by Eric Sloan that the homeschoolers had years ago on the weather, on how to tell the weather. I think every one of you should learn about weather, learn how to tell it, and do it in your own area, right where you live. And don't depend on, and teach your children how to do weather. This guy, Eric Sloan, who wrote, I believe, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, sadly, and his books are wonderful, wonderful for homeschoolers. He showed old ways of building things, how to build fences, how to make a road, how to build a well house, just all kinds of books he had. And of course, then I made the mistake of looking him up on Wikipedia, and it was telling what a bad life he had, and what a sad life he had, and everything. I never know what to believe anymore, but it seems like when I get a good author or a good book, that some of the powers that be always run them down, which makes me wonder if it's just the opposite. I don't know, but by their fruits you shall know them. And he had good fruits in his books, so I find it kind of contradictory when I read that he wasn't up and up type of fellow. But I'm going to go ahead and read what he wrote here. Now, he included a poem. I don't think he wrote the poem, but I want you to listen to this poem because it shows these little clues about what people used to think about the weather. And then later on, I'll read something else he wrote that you might find very interesting for your home life. And some of you that might be suffering from maybe what they said, Mrs. I'm trying to think what her name was in North and South, about the factories in England. And this family had come to work up there, and Mrs. I don't know what her name had low spirits because of the weather in the area. There was not as much sunshine. And I remember the mother of the manufacturing guy, she said, we don't have time for low spirits here because everything's about trade, everything's about manufacturing, and if you want to be anybody, you'll be in trade. That's the thing. They didn't believe in anything else. So here is signs of rain. Now you might not think that this has anything to do with your home life, but since I like to have homemaking next after I've done appearance, I want to indicate how good this is to know, because it will affect your homemaking. Sometimes it's hard to get started, and it might have something to do with the air. And I don't know exactly everything about it, and I am learning. Okay, signs of rain. This is an old poem from way back. The hollow winds begin to blow, the clouds look black, the glass is low. Now, I suppose that would have been the little measuring for the thermometer glass. The soot falls down, the spaniels sleep, and spiders from their cobwebs peep. Last night the sun went pale to bed, the moon in halos hid her head. The walls are damp, the ditches smell. Closed is the pink-eyed pimpernel. Hark how the chairs and tables crack, old Betty's nerves are on the rack. Loud quacks the duck, the peacocks cry, the distant hills are seeming nigh. Low o'er the grass the swallow wings, the cricket, too, how sharp he sings. Through the clear stream the fishes rise, and nimbly catch incautious flies. The glowworms, numerous and light, illumined the dewy dell last night. And see you rooks, how odd their flight. Remember Mr. Hamley talked about Roger and how he knew about the rooks? They imitate the gliding kite, and seem precipitate to fall, as if they felt the piercing ball. 'Twas surely rain, I see with sorrow, our jaunt must be put off tomorrow. Now, here's another little thing that he wrote in his book on weather. Each line of this poem is an indication or a clue to weather and mood, and how we have stopped. I don't think ever, as long as I've lived, we've paid much attention to the meaning of weather and the effect of weather. It was just either snowing or blowing or raining or shining, and but these people knew that there was more to it. So this might be something you might benefit from in the home. The walls are damp, the ditches smell. That was in the poem I just read. That indicates humid air and a lessening of the atmospheric pressure that has held in much of the odor of swamps and wet places during the high pressure of good weather. When that pressure lowers, captive odors are released and things smell more. And I didn't copy the part where it said sailors who can smell a storm or something, but I thought maybe you might wonder about that, because sometimes I will smell something in the manse here. It just smells like old water, and yet there's no mold, there's no mildew, and I just smell, kind of a dampness, and I don't like it. And I keep thinking, well, maybe I should clean a wall or something. Maybe I should wash the floor. But that is an indication of air pressure and damp weather. It says that walls are damp, the ditches smell, indicates humid air and a lessening of the atmospheric pressure that has held in much of the odor of wet places during high pressure good weather. And when pressure lowers, captive odors are released and they smell more. Interesting. Okay, and here's something else he wrote. He wrote, today, when we build a house, and all of you who are homemakers, you're concerned about your house, aren't you? In fact, if you had your house built, you were concerned about where everything would be and how it would be arranged and where it would be situated. These are things people don't think about very much. Today, when we build a house, we usually regard the land plot as flat, and we place our house ornamentally rather than meteorologically. This was written back, I believe, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the old houses, see, even then, there were the old days for them. Even they looked to the past for knowledge. The old houses were more often placed with great consideration for prevailing winds and sun exposure. A small hill or a grove of trees was not regarded only decoratively, as it is today, but as an atmospheric mechanism that ensured the working of fireplaces, the elimination of mildew, freedom from snowdrifts, and protection from unfavorable winds. The fact that many old barns still stand, it's interesting to hear what he wrote here, because we think of the old barns as the time that he lived. He's thinking of the old barns as the time before his own time. The fact that many old barns still stand is a tribute to the air-mindedness of the pioneers who built them. You can usually remodel an old barn into a pleasant and comfortable home, but not even livestock could live well in some of our own homes, our modern homes, if they were remodeled into barns. Interesting. Actually, a house is built not so much upon a piece of land as it is built upward into a section of atmosphere. I can kind of understand this. The land surface that a house is set upon consists only of cellar and basement, but the larger portions of it, the sides and the roof of the house, live in the weather. It makes sense then that the air plot, or the atmospheric acreage, is an important part of real estate, which not only affects the construction of the home, but also all the living that goes on in it. Now that just be something to ponder for a while. I'll try to print that on the post on which I have placed this video. If you're new here, please click the link in the description and go listen to it on the post. So let me see where this is. A house is built not so much upon a piece of land, but upward into a section of atmosphere. So the atmosphere real estate, very interesting. So there's a couple of drawings here, and it says drawing 4 shows a few of the values of placing a house correctly into its atmospheric acreage as suggested by the early barn builders of New England and taken from early almanacs. An old builder's saying, "A house on a hill gets the air coming and going," is more scientific than it sounds, because warm daytime air is light and flows uphill, while night air flows downhill. So a house halfway up a hill is assured of one complete daily ventilation, even in a dead calm. Interesting. See, we don't know this because the contractors come in, they just whack out a bunch of houses, and some of us end up in old houses that not much thought was made about the atmospheric condition. And so I will put this on, I'll put this little drawing on for you. For dry barns, it's always best to clear the trees that face the west. If stagnant air, don't build there. Prevailing fair weather wind, healthy free air moving wind eddies cause collection of dust and pollen. Are you suffering from pollen in the spring? And yes, I do suffer a lot from it. It can clog up your mind. It can help you lose your memory even more than it is. It can help you lose your voice to the pollen. And we don't think about these things, do we? So I want to be sure that I put that on there for you, because maybe some of that can be helpful. And you can get this Eric Sloan book called The Weather, and learn to read the weather and learn about this thing. And knowledge also, when you have knowledge like this, it also takes away some confusion. Some of you might feel anxiety inside of your house, or some kind of weirdness. I called it the creepy house syndrome, but really it's a stuffy house syndrome. When you have knowledge, it puts your mind at ease, puts your body at ease. If you have some knowledge, it's like when I get to the people section here, and we talk about how some people act up, and what their motivation is, and why they do it, and what it causes. Then you're no longer confused, and they can continue acting like that, but it doesn't bother you as much when you have knowledge. Now, for the homemaking, I think one of the most important things is control of self. And I always thought that getting yourself ready and getting your house in the order that you like it, in the situation that you like it, is a practice of self-control, which the Bible teaches. And so when people accuse you of being controlling, they always like to accuse people of being controlling when they're out of line. They accuse someone of controlling them. I would say, yes, I am controlling. I'm trying to control my appearance and control my house so that I can manage it. And now, as far as homemaking goes, I wanted to tell you something about the word dish. We all have our favorite dishes, but we also have, we use that word as a figure to represent the contents of a dish. For instance, we'll make something that everybody likes and that it's our favorite dish. and it is usually a food. Maybe it's a cassoulet, maybe it's some sliced whatever. And so you say, when we're going to go to a church dinner, we're going to bring your favorite dish. And they don't mean bring a fancy platter or a piece of porcelain or or some fine china. They mean bring the contents of a food that is your favorite dish. And so we use that word dish as a figure of speech which represents the contents. And I forget what that's called. It's a metaphor or something, and it just indicates the when we say the container, the name of the container, but it indicates the contents. Okay, so I wanted to teach you that because I'm also homeschooling you. I just can't quit. And some of you missed out. You weren't able, and I wasn't homeschooled, but I decided I would homeschool all of you. And so let's talk about that word dish, because we also use it as a figure of speech for, remember I tell you that life is part good and part bad, and we accept life as having, no matter what era you live in. Even the Victorian era had its bad guys and its good guys, and learning to live with whatever life dishes up. So we're not talking about the dishes, the stack of plates in your cabinet or your shelves. We're talking about what life dishes up, and there it is, used in a different sense. And I guess it's kind of a verb, whatever life dishes up. And so I wanted you to understand that. Maybe I'll put a picture of a dish on the page here. But I wanted to read something from the Bible, and I've still got a little more time here, so I wanted to read this. And it's Philippians 4. That's a rich chapter, isn't it? It's worth memorizing that whole chapter. It has 23 verses in it. And so that's like almost 23 sentences or more. And it's really a rich chapter. We recognize it from the whatever is true, whatever is lovely verse, but it has so much more in it. So be sure and read it and understand all of it. So I'm going to read this little statement here where the Apostle Paul says how he learned that to live in the good and in the bad. Okay? For I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I also know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And so that means the same as what I was saying, whatever life dishes up, we learn how we accept the challenge of how to deal with it. And there's sometimes only experience can give you that way to deal with it. Everyone's different, and they all have different families, and there's no one way to deal with it. And I wanted to give you some good news about some things concerning this, how life dishes up things. And I always wondered, though, I wanted to just kind of deviate a little bit, because I always wondered about when people are trying to teach this to you. They say, oh, Paul said he knew how to abound in every circumstances, facing plenty and then facing need, abundance and need. And they'll always talk to you about, how to abound or be content in bad circumstances. But nobody ever warns you of how to be content and how to abound in good circumstances, because we assume that good circumstances is abounding. But that's an interesting question, isn't it? How do you behave when the circumstances are good, and how do you live when the circumstances are better and there's not so much need and you are doing better? And I think that we have to be very discerning about this. You don't go around looking like you're still suffering if you're not, and try to look good if you can. Try to look like if you've prospered a little, there's nothing wrong with getting some new clothes or furniture. There's nothing wrong with that. And it is a way of showing how God is so good. And I think we're in a current era where people are afraid to look like they're doing too well, because someone might think they're cheating, or someone might think that they're boasting. And that's a difficult one, isn't it? Maybe you have some comments about that. So when you have a need to abound more in the home and to pursue your interests and your talents, or develop skills and talents, I believe I wrote down here somewhere that there are two ways of developing our full potential. And one is through a need, and let me see if I can remember the other one, is through experience. Through a bad or good experience, you develop your full potential. And the other thing I think is really important is to pray for your success in your home. Are there things that are really bothering you, things mounting up, and your list is getting longer and longer of things that you would like to do or need to do or urgently should do? I myself, I know what that's like. I've gotten right up really close to missing a couple of birthdays of my descendants, and it's getting harder for me to keep track of everything because I've got so much on my mind. And I want to send meaningful things to these birthday children, so that when they get a card or a letter, it is something that is loaded enough that they would keep it and look back on it, and it would give them some guidance. And of course, I always want to point them to the Word of God as their guidance, their ultimate guidance. And I think that's the best thing a mother and a grandmother can do, is point them to. People often ask Mr. S a question. They want to ask him a question, some spiritual question. And he will say something like, well, personally, I don't know, I can't tell you myself, but I could show you, I could probably find something in the Bible that would answer that. I think that's the best answer we can give anybody. Now, also, I wanted to talk to you about writing your own history. I wanted to homeschool you and I wanted to read you from a history book, but I decided that it would be better for you to know your own history, to write your own history, and know the names of your ancestors, and know the places that they lived, if you possibly can. Because one of the things that a tyrannical government will do to control people is to erase their history, so that they don't have any loyalty to anything other than them. And I think it's really important. That's why we keep reading the Bible, because there's a history that hasn't been erased. And so I have also some things I wanted just to talk about, just general conversation today. And one of them is that my appreciation has increased for all these wonderful mothers who spent so much time providing food. I know my mother, I don't think I'm sure she was underappreciated, but all the women were like that at the time. She grew a huge garden and provided food for the winter that pretty much lasted through the winter. Plus, we ate it fresh. That's a huge garden. But she spent a lot of her time just working in that garden and providing the food. And then when we moved to a fishing village somewhere where there was a town nearby, she spent a lot of time at the grocery store. And having, gone to the grocery store a lot, it occurred to me while I'm pushing the cart and I'm looking around thinking, my mother was so unappreciated How many times did she do this? How many times did she go to the store? And she wasn't paid for it, but she did it out of the goodness of her heart because she wanted the best for her family. How many women do we know that tirelessly work in a garden or shop at the grocery store? That's a big effort. I hate going because it means I'm going to lose time in my home. But how much they're so underappreciated, these women that have to go and get groceries. And then, of course, when they get home, they've got to unload it all, put it all away. And if they have help, that's wonderful. And that's wonderful if they've got people in their home that can help. But when they're maybe not so many and their children are real little and they can't, these women just do so much. And how much more time away from home women have had to spend because of the grocery shopping and other types of shopping. And they're not really free. They're just it's almost as bad as going to work sometimes, the things that they have to go out and do constantly, and how underappreciated they are. But since the war, I have been ordering a lot more and reminded how much time my mother and the mothers of that era spent with the catalogs ordering, and how little I knew about it or wished that I'd had the chance to really appreciate the time that they spent ordering that. I think probably as homeschool mamas and grandmas, we ought to tell our children what we're doing and tell our children what we've done. We just didn't want people to praise us all the time, and so we didn't tell them. But I wish in retrospect we had done something like, now I have spent so many hours trying to get this order ready for you, and I'm not doing this because I'm getting paid or I'm not motivated by anything else but the fact that I want the well-being of my family. And anything that we do, we need to remind our children the effort that was put into it, so that they can pay attention to the details of our lives and see how their lives are built by that and how important that is. They got us, powers that be got us so busy rushing around doing things that we took for granted, some of these things that people at home did. I have some really interesting good news, is that in reading this book here by Brian Kozlowski, I'll just read a few words from it, from the last chapter. And then I can tell you, just little tidbits of things that just made me feel happy this week. And you can do that too. When the internet first came on and we were practicing email and it was all getting established, people would send forward things. We learned to forward things, and there were always these interesting lists that went around, and some of them were like, what am I doing today? What am I wearing? What am I listening to? What have I eaten? These are really, really important. And I think those are things that little children can put in their diaries, or at the end of the day can say, okay, gather everyone around and say, what did we do today? Let's look back at the day. Let's just see all the good things that went on today, and not let their minds go blank with so much tizzy, so much running around that they don't understand their lives. So let's have some days at home where we don't go anywhere, and then let's see what we did. And yesterday I was rather discouraged because I didn't feel I had done anything, hadn't done any sewing, hadn't cleaned up anything in places where I wanted to make progress. Just ordinary things, and I'd made a meal. But then I got to thinking, I went to the grocery store. That's what took up my time, and it doesn't show. Some of these things that we do don't show, but we need to keep little diaries of these little things. Very important. My mother-in-law kept a diary because she wanted to look back to see what they did last week in case she was ever called upon to remember. And it was amazing. She'd get out that diary and say, Well, when was the last time we changed the filter on the oil furnace? And she could go back in her diary and look. And just things like that. When was the last time we ate? Or when we had company last time, if the same people were coming over, let's figure out if I fed them the same thing last time. So that's how useful that was to them. And also, if you have a day where you don't feel like you were worthy of it, where you didn't get anything done, you might write down more than you thought that you had done. It says, the fragments of Jane's final novel, Sanditon, set in a seaside spa town, reveal a developing theme of what true health means and how to properly cherish it. We can only guess how many more thoughtful health strategies Austen would have left us in Sanditon. Now, Sanditon, I understand, is one of Jane Austen's unfinished novels that other people have tried to finish and they've sullied it terribly. But you could take it, it's copyright free, and you could finish it. You could write an ending to it. Whether through eating, exercise, or mental management. I loved that Brian Kozlowski had a chapter on mental management as part of health. And years ago, there was also a book written on, it was called Greater Health, God's Way by Stormy Ormation. She had some interesting divisions of health, and she included your spiritual health and your mental health. It all works together. Your body works in conjunction with your mind and your mood. Isn't that interesting? That's why I say take some time out, ladies, and do some stretches. Part of my good news is I decided to sit down yesterday since I was so discouraged and write down everything because I didn't think I'd done anything. So I decided, well, I'll just write down good news. I'd had an aching back. And so I went to YouTube and I looked up Fabulous 50s back exercises. And I got a 5-minute back exercises. I barely did it. It didn't look interesting to me and I didn't much enjoy it. But you know, after 5 minutes of trying it, the backache went away. So that's one good thing that happened. And I'll tell you more in a minute. And these are little things you can write down of good things that happen. Get serious about this. Get yourself a nice little art journal book. You can go to Hobby Lobby and get an art journal book. And if you don't do art, you could put other things in it to illustrate. But we do know, however, that Jane took a dose of her own medicine. Despite often debilitating pain and weakness, Austen stayed remarkably energetic, walking regularly, eating enough, and looking for happiness even on her darkest hour. She said, whatever our personal health struggles or weaknesses, we must always and only do our best with what we've been given. And so Austen leaves us with one simple, truly immortal and universal advice any of us will ever need. We must think the best and hope the best and do the best. And of course, that's very biblical. And it goes along with what I have, the various things that I have read in here. And I would say to you this week to read Philippians 4, make one of these notebooks out of it and try to analyze it and illustrate it and do everything you can. The whole book, the whole chapter of Philippians 4, not just 8, verse 8 being one of our favorites. So then, after I discovered that I had done that 5-minute exercise and my backache went away, I got a phone call from a friend. No, I didn't. I called her. And she answered her phone. And I said, what's that noise? And she says, well, I'm up in the airplane with my son. Her son had gotten his pilot's license and was flying a small plane. And I think he even has his own plane. And had taken her up to see the mountains. And so she was texting pictures to me from the airplane and talking to me on the phone from the airplane and then texting me afterwards. And I thought, her chickens have truly come to roost in the good way. and that is that all the work that she put into her son, she homeschooled him and taught him to pursue something of value and of interest. And then she put all of her heart into helping him do that and finding opportunities for him. And they had no money, but they found friends and they found people that would help. And I think she even asked people she knew that knew about flying, is there some way you could teach my son? Is there some way you could help him? And it reminded me of Booker T. Washington's mother. She couldn't read, but she knew how to find the Blueback Speller and other reading books for her son because she wanted her son to learn to read. And so this lady, this friend of mine, she can't fly, but she made sure her son, she gave him every opportunity to help him and give him that opportunity. And also, one of the reasons that he can do that is that she didn't encourage him to tie himself down to a meaningless job or a job just for the money. So, because she wanted him to have the time to pursue this. And so that happened to me. That's good. And then we had what's called a fifth Sunday singing, where all the congregations get together and convene in one place for an hour to sing. And then afterwards they go, the fellowship room has been prepared with all the treats and the refreshments. And so and it was like, because it's an old building, it was so acoustically nice, and the very few people that were there, because we live in the country areas, but the singing was absolutely wonderful, and everyone was in such a good mood. And so she texted me and said it was just like, she's older than me, she's more vital than I am, and she said it's just like when she was younger, as a child, that the old-fashioned singings, they were so innocent and so non-sophisticated, but everyone just wanted to sing. And so we sang a couple of really good songs. Everyone took turns leading them, and then she texted me and said that it was absolutely wonderful and that she thought that the refreshments were just right. And so my only objection to it is that I did not get time to go around and talk to everybody. There just wasn't time enough to go and visit everyone. And and then let me think, there was one more good thing that happened. One of my sons came over and played chess with one of my grandsons, and he was asking questions about it, and they were talking about the strategies and things like that. It's just so interesting to listen to, and what a picture it made to see those two playing chess. And let me see if I have anything else that I want to pass on to you today. All I can say is I wanted to read a little bit out of Elizabeth Gaskell's Wives and Daughters, but I also wanted to caution you about authors of the period, of the times, or any authors. Sometimes there is an overriding social program going on in some of these novels to change people's thinking or change society. So when you're listening to something like Wives and Daughters or watching the movie, just enjoy the little things. That's what I enjoy. For instance, when I watch North and South, which I don't have the book yet, but also written by Elizabeth Gaskell, I enjoy watching that. I like the tapestries and the fabrics and the dyes of the period, which they did a pretty good job in that movie. I like to watch the scenes. I like to watch and hear some of the sayings and that sort of thing. So I wanted to just caution you to not take, to be careful at how literature can influence you. And one of the things that I did when my children were growing up is remembered my mother's stories. Some of you can tell a better story than most of these authors of that period. And so, use that. Use those stories. Tell those stories. Your own stories, your mother's stories. So, I was going to tell you about Molly and going to visit Mrs. Hamley in Wives and Daughters. So, one of Mrs. Hamley's often expressed wishes had been that Molly might come and pay her a visit. Mr. Gibson always refused this request of hers, though he could hardly have given his reasons for these refusals. He did not want to lose the companionship of his child, in fact, but he put it to himself in quite a different way. It's interesting, when my children were little, how many people were constantly asking if they could come over and spend the night or whatever. And it is quite disturbing in a way, because it gives other people a chance to influence your children when they're in their formative years. And I think for the most part, parents need to be very cautious about that. And I can see Mr. Hamley's point here. Mr. Gibson's point here. He didn't want her away from him too long when she was very young. He thought her lessons and her regular course of employment would be interrupted. The life in Mrs. Hamley's heated and scented room would not be good for the girl. That's interesting, since we've been talking here so much about the free air and the fresh air. And how even this was in Jane Austen's time, I presume, in Jane Austen's time, how concerned they were that they had an open window, or that they got outside, at least out of the stuffy air, into the free-flowing air. And how Mr. Gibson, the doctor, was concerned about this too. He said the life in Mrs. Hamley's heated and scented room would not be good for the girl. Osborne and Roger Hamley would be at home, and he did not wish Molly to be thrown too exclusively upon them for young society, or they would not be at home, or they might not be at home, and it would be rather dull and depressing for his girl to be all day long with just a nervous invalid. So he saw conflicts there. But at length the day came when Mr. Gibson rode over and volunteered a visit from Molly, an offer which Mrs. Hamley received with the open arms of her heart, as she expressed it, and of which the duration was unspecified. Okay, so we'll continue more with that later. And so, ladies, I love you, and you've changed my life by coming here and paying attention. And I thank you for tolerating it all. And I hope you do well today. And if you have any apprehensions about it, then please pray and ask God to give you good success in your home. This is more important than good success in the world. This is more important than praying for your politicians or your government right now. I know the Bible does say we have to pray for them, but let's remember, your relatives, your children, your grandchildren should take up most of your prayer life. And so do the best you can, look the best you can, work the best you can, keep your mind on Christ. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.